sorry, I'm going to speak on that point about weight one more time. This is not as accurate as the weight, because if you pack in flour, you can fit quite a bit more than if you just sifted some flour into this scoop. Everybody scoops differently. The bag may be really compacted. You don't get accurate results with volume measurements, but you do with weight. That's why all of this recipe is in weight. It makes it so much easier and takes all the risk out of this recipe. And again, we're doing this so we make easy bread, right? Okay, so let's get to it. The first thing that you're gonna wanna do is grab 200 grams of milk. And what I do is I just set the pan on the weight, or the scale, and I tare the weight of the pan. And then I just pour the milk until I hit 200 grams. And then I sprinkle in the 40 grams of flour. Now this I generally do with a scoop measurement, and I tare the weight of that one on the scale. That way, if I accidentally pour too much flour into the measurement and I go over 40 grams, I'm not scooping out wet flour. It's not my idea of a good time. So 40 grams of bread flour, and then you just dump it in there. The next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna whisk it all together. I did this earlier and I lost my video. I'm gonna try to find it so that I can add it into here later, but if not, it's very simple. You just whisk it until it incorporates, and it's gonna look like a slurry. That's the best I can describe it, just really thick milk. And once it's gotten to thick milk, you can turn on the heat, put it on medium heat, and you just stir, 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 stir. And as soon as the pan actually gets warm enough that it's starting to evaporate the water in the milk, then you're gonna start to see it congeal. And that's when you really wanna start mixing it so that it doesn't get really clumpy in one area and not. And you'll know when you're done mixing it because it's gonna get this really glossy look. As you whisk it, it's gonna pull away from itself, very, very elastic-like. And it's gonna have this kind of springiness to it. You don't wanna go to the point where it starts to color it and get brown or anything like that. You've gone too far at that point. I haven't tried salvaging that kind of thing. I've just always started over. But you just want to cook the water out of it just a little bit and really make it elastic. And that changes the proteins, the gluten in the wheat, and allows for you to develop nice, strong structure in the bread. That way when the water inside the dough cooks while it's baking, it creates that vapor and elasticity and bubbles and makes it a really nice light bread without completely drying out. So it's still moist and delicious to eat for up to 2 weeks afterwards. Hence why the Tangzhong is so important to making this Tangzhong milk bread. So once you're done doing that, you're gonna turn off the heat. Sometimes when I'm doing it so that it doesn't burn, can I take it on and off? But you really do have to get the pan just a little bit warm before you start doing that. Otherwise, it's gonna take you forever. But once the pan is actually warm, it's maybe 5 minutes, 10 tops. It depends on how often you're taking it off and cooling it back down, essentially. And it's really not hard. That's the most hands-on part of this whole process, just cooking out the water out of that first little bit of the Tangzhong. So once you've taken that off the heat, I just put the whole pan in the fridge. It doesn't need saran wrap on it or anything. It's just the time that you need to take a little bit of the heat off of it. And the reason why that's important is because of the yeast. Yeast is very susceptible to temperature. It's the reason why you can store yeast for so long in the fridge. It keeps it cool, it keeps it in a stasis form. But once it heats up, it activates, and too hot, then you kill it off. So we just want to take a little bit of the heat off of it by putting it in the fridge. It's a great time to assemble the rest of your ingredients. So you're going to weigh 580 grams of flour directly into the bowl of your stand mixer. There's no reason for you to get yet another thing dirty. I keep harping on that, but it's so important for me to not have to wash 14,000 things. When you have kids and a busy life, you don't want to make bread this whole ordeal, right? So yes, so you fill your bowl, and like I said, you put the bowl on the weight, you tare the weight. If you don't know what it is, look it up. It's Google. Yay! And you get 580 grams of bread flour. And then in that same bowl, you're going to put the rest of the dry ingredients. But before you do that, I like to weigh them out on something else. That way, if I put too much in, I'm not trying to like scoop salt away from flour. It's a whole thing. So I tare the weight of a little small container or something. It doesn't have to be anything major. But I happen to have these. They were dirt cheap, so Walmart, yay! But you can use like one of your kids' sippy cups, or I don't know, Rubbermaid plastic containers. It doesn't make a difference. Point is, you just tare the weight of whatever is holding the solution, and then you're going what you're measuring. And then you're going to measure 60 grams of sugar. Like I said, the sugar is just to feed the yeast. It's just enough to do that. And 60 grams is about 3 tablespoons. But like I said, you really do want to measure this because it's not exactly that. And you really do want to get it fairly close to those ratios that I was talking about. So 60 grams of sugar, pour it into the bowl close to the edge, and then 10 grams of yeast, the dry active yeast like I was telling you about. Better flavor, haha. And then you can put that fairly close to the sugar, but you want it on the outside of the bowl, kind of close to the edge or wall, whatever. And then you're going to measure out 12 grams of salt. And that one you want to put on the opposite side of the yeast, and that's because salt retards yeast. Again, I had a video of this, and I was showing you the bowl, and I am learning how to do YouTube, I promise. The next video isn't going to be so piecemeal. But yeah, once you've put them all in, I like to just take my hand like a claw and start mixing it into the flour. That way it's all fairly incorporated, all the dry ingredients. You can use the dough hook, but I have found that it doesn't really incorporate it that well, and it takes way too long and it doesn't really do the job. Or you can use the whisk attachment to your stand mixer. That does a great job, but I just don't like washing it. And it's a lot easier to wash my hands. So it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. But I just find the claw method is really easy and really fast. And I don't get puffs of flour everywhere. So after you've mixed all the dry ingredients, then you can add all the wet ingredients. It's 1 egg, or 50 grams of egg. Usually a large egg from anywhere is about 50 grams. You really don't have to measure it, but if you want to, you're more than welcome to. And like I said, if you want to half this recipe, you're going to have to break the egg. Again, since I've been using this to measure everything anyway, I just crack the egg in here and make sure that I don't get any shell in the actual bowl. It makes a whole mess trying to get it out once it's starting to get incorporated. So yeah, you can crack the egg in here, whisk it up, and then divide it into half if you're just making half of the recipe. And then I usually use that extra half of an egg for scrambled eggs in the morning anyway. So it's not like it's a huge loss or a whole ordeal. But yeah, so the 3 wet ingredients are the egg, the 50 grams of egg, which is about an egg, 260 grams of milk, and then the Tangzhong. Sorry, I'm real slow. So you add all three of those things. And like I said, I just take it out of the fridge and scoop it into the bowl. Done. That's all you need to do with it. And you start mixing it. And just as the wet and dry start to come together and you don't see like super dry blobby bits, well, even the blobby bits are fine. So long as they're starting to come together, then you can add the butter, which is the last ingredient. You're going to need 50 grams. Like I said, it's about a little conservatively half of a stick of butter. And you want it room temperature. And you add it a pat at a time. Yeah, it's super easy. Once you've added all of the ingredients and you see that it's just come together, that's when you add the butter. So I'm not showing this because I already did it. I'm sorry. Again, I am going to try to find that video and possibly post it, but if not, sorry. Yeah, you just stir it on the very first setting. That's all you need to do to incorporate it. If you put it too high, then you're just gonna get a mess everywhere. So just bring the ingredients together. Once you've added all of the butter, it's gonna make this squidgy sound like quack, 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 quack. I know that sounds really lovely, but it's a good sign. You're on the right track. And once the butter is completely incorporated and really starts to get going, you want to give it about 2 to 5 minutes to really start to develop the gluten. Now I have a professional mixer. The bowl is bigger, which means the dough hook doesn't do a really great job of getting this stuff on the sides, especially when I'm making a really, really small batch. If I were making a bigger batch, it'd be fine. But I have an issue with that because I have such a big mixer. Comes in great for really big batches of things, but not exactly for this. So if you have a regular stand mixer, you're actually at a better advantage than me. So yeah, so after giving it 2 to 5 minutes at that first step, then you want to bring it up just one tick, and give it another 2 to 5 minutes. And then you can bring it up another tick. And so after about 15 minutes, you'll start to see that the dough has really started to work and really get that gluten going. Now, every stand mixer is different. Every time you make it is going to be just a little bit different, so you really want to eyeball it. And the consistency that you're looking for is smooth on top without being sticky. And you will not be able to tell how sticky it is from just touching it in the bowl, because that's just the way it is. But when it's done, it's going to be as pillowy and soft as this. And when you touch it, it's not going to stick to your fingers. And the only way to test that is by grabbing it out of the bowl and just trying to tuck in the edges that are trying to stick to you underneath. Now, if it's sticky enough that it's leaving things on your hands, put it back in the bowl and keep mixing. If it's sticking, but when you pull your hand away, it's fine, then you know that it's ready. And if it gets that nice smooth dome on the top, you know that the dough is ready. So then you want to smooth out all the edges, put it back in the bowl, and cover it just like I had over here. You can use saran wrap, but I'm trying to be more conservative nowadays and not have to go to the store as often. So a clean tea towel works just fine. And if you're worried about it off-gassing, I just put the lid to my pan on top of it so that it wouldn't off-gas nearly as much. You really don't have to worry about it. Yeah, so this is what it looks like after it's been sitting for about 45 minutes to an hour. It's doubled in size. It was actually half of this size. And you can see that it's nice and pillowy. You can poke it and it still retains its shape. You know that you've let it sit too long if when you poke it like this, it gets stringy and deflates super quickly. And that's okay. Overproofing happens. No one's going to die from it. But it does tend to change the consistency of how your bake comes out. It sometimes ends up very, very dense. But hey, dense bread is better than no bread, right? So I'm going to show you about the size of it before you actually proof it. And the reason why I say about 45 minutes is because it all depends on where you're from, where you live, what time of year it is. The great thing about chemistry is that so long as you've got the right ingredients, the right measurements of the ingredients, you can get the same results generally every time. The one difference about bread is that where you live makes a difference, because the humidity here in Dallas may be different than where you're from. Elevation sometimes makes difference. The temperature, what time of year it is, if it's hot or if it's cold. If it's too cold, the yeast will take a lot longer to rise and do its job, like I was telling you with the fridge. So really keep that in mind. So this is about the size of the dough when I first got done with it, and you can see it doesn't stick to my hand. And now that it's even less sticky now that it's proofed, but that's about what you're looking for once it's done mixing. And like I said, it can take a little bit of time. Don't be afraid to let it really work on that dough hook, or work it by hand, either way. But once it's proofed like this, and had that nice proofing period, you really want to deflate it quite a bit. That's why I keep squidging it between my hands and poking it, making sure that it's deflated. The reason why you want to do that is because you really want consistency with the air pockets in your dough. And by really deflating it like this, you get it to kind of reset all around the dough so that you don't have pockets of big bubbles on the outside and little ones on the inside, that kind of thing. So I'm going to weigh my dough, because that's what you do when you are obsessive and a nerd. And that's me. Because when I'm separating my doughs, I really want them to be about the same size. Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time getting this to turn on. Turn on. My scale needs new batteries. It died. Okay, so I'm going to have to eyeball this, which I don't like, but at least it'll be closer to home for you guys. I'm sure y'all aren't nearly as obsessive about this kind of thing. So like I said, this is dough for 2 loaves. So I'm gonna squidge it between my fingers until it kind of breaks and get about 2 loaves like that. And I have a clean work surface over here that I'm gonna use. Guys, I promise I was planning this. I was so organized earlier, and then everything fell apart. Clearly I had to test this beforehand and did not, and I'm learning. Welcome to my learning channel. All right, so here's our clean work surface. We've cut our dough in half, but it's kind of uneven, so I'm going to even it back out like that. Ta-da! 2 doughs. Yay. Kudos, 2 doughs. Yeah, I don't know why I keep trying to make my scale work. But yeah, so we have 2 doughs. I'm so dependent on it. That's the problem. I've become dependent on my scale, and I wants it. I needs it. So now that we've separated it into 2, we're going to make kind of 3 sections of the dough. And this allows it to rise evenly so that you don't just get one big gigantic dome at the top, which some people like, but with such a large loaf, I like to do this. So we're going to cut this in thirds. One right here. One right here. All right. That's close enough. So the first thing I'm going to do is slap it on the board to really get it elastic, and then slap it again the other way and really allow it to drag its bottom like this as I'm tucking the sides in and turning. Tuck, turn, so that it gets this nice, really tight surface tension to the top of the roll. And after I'm done doing that, I'm going to cover it. Now, like I said, I made this bread fairly, it hasn't been that long, a couple of days ago. So I'm just going to use the saran wrap to the loaf that we've already eaten and cover that, because it was just used for bread, the exact same bread. It's not going to hurt it to reuse it, especially since I've only been touching the outside of it. So yeah, next one. Slap, pull, slap, the other direction, and pull. And the other direction, I mean turn it 90 degrees. And then turn as you push it down into the cutting board or surface, either way. As you turn like that. And you get this really nice taut surface area. So yeah, that one goes underneath there. Oh no, I think it's a little bit bigger than the other one. Guys, I may have to get some saran wrap out. Oh no. The reason why I say it is because I didn't want to have to, but I think I'm going to have to cover it with saran wrap. Alright. I didn't really do that flip in the last one very well, but I'm trying. And you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. I just want it to. I oftentimes miss doing this with my friends over because, I don't know, it's like when you have to do something with your hands, otherwise you can't concentrate. I'm not explaining this very well. Hold on, let me get my saran wrap. Here we are. I'm the kind of person that fidgets a lot. I like having something to do with my hands. Even when I'm watching TV, I'd rather be knitting or coloring or doodling or even playing just some dumb game on my phone. Because let's be real, we all have those days. Some of us more than others. But the point is, I like having something to do, something to occupy my hands while my brain is active. I like having people over just so I have somebody to talk to while I'm cooking or while I'm cleaning or while I'm taking care of the kids. And I really like baking with people at my house. I don't know why. There's something so enjoyable about doing something that isn't just necessary. Like, everybody's got to eat, but also doing something with the people that you love and that you care about. Which is why I'm so glad to be able to do this, because I feel like I get to invite my friends back over to my house, even though we're doing this whole social distancing thing to make sure that everybody stays safe. I would hate to have it on my conscience that I got someone really ill or worse. So I'm really glad that I can talk to you guys from a distance. Yay! But yes, there's something wonderful about cooking for your friends and being able to have time to have a little bit of fellowship, which is a fancy word for just companionship time with one another. And know that you're going through some of the same things. To know that you have someone to commiserate with. To know that someone cares about your triumphs, your daily struggles. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm most excited about when this whole thing is over. Getting together again, having a nice big party where I can feed all my friends till they explode. That'll be a good day. And this is the really good thing about making a large batch of bread. I mean, who doesn't eat bread? People who are very sad that they can't have bread because they're on diets. I should probably be more considerate. I know there are a lot of people who are trying to cut back on the amount of gluten that they're eating just because it's a lot of carbs. But I prefer to just have a little bit of carbs and cut out something else. I'm sorry. I really like bread. I don't know if you do too, but I don't know. Maybe after you try this bread, you'll like it as much as I do. That's what I keep telling my husband, actually. We were talking about that the other day. We were noticing, man, we really like food. I figured it would be so much easier to diet and be thin as a board if I didn't like it. But the problem is, we try so many wonderful recipes and yummy foods, especially here in Dallas, where we have such a great restaurant culture. There's so much to choose from, so many different, ethnic cuisines to try, so much variety, even amongst those different kinds, that we're really spoiled for options on food here. Yeah, once you've covered your dough balls, and the reason why we do this is so that they don't dry out. Now we're giving them just a little bit of time because we pounded all of those bubbles out of it. We're giving it a minute for it to spring back to that puffy state. And like I said, you really want this nice, pillowy, yummy bread rather than this doughy, half-baked thing. So allowing it just 10-15 minutes to rise back up to where it was makes a huge difference in how it bakes. So I'm going to leave this for about 15 minutes and we'll come back. Yay. I'm so excited.